What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 119. As ever, I'm your host, George St. Ledger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. We're here to break down everything that's happened inside the first sort of game of each playoff series within the first series of the playoffs is what we're essentially going to do. As ever, though, before we jump into these box scores, how you doing, boys? Are you well? Louis, I'm going to go to you first, as I feel that you might not be as well as Lewis is after the weekend's events.
Oh yeah, there's a tough dent on the Arsenal title challenge, and then obviously long-time listeners of the podcast will know I don't have a fondness for the Los Angeles Lakers, but they looked imperious. Well, we'll get to that later on. They looked imperious, but really topped off the weekend. But otherwise, okay.
Lewis, how about yourself?
Yeah, better. Half of Man United team's still injured, but we won. It's all that matters.
And the Celtics obviously absolutely spanked the Hawks as well. Would you describe yourself as the Celtics fan? Is what we're going to say?
No, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. No, I wouldn't say I support one team, to be honest, when it comes to basketball.
However, unlike yourself, I would say I do support the team. And I'd say I support the Philadelphia. Oh, what happened there? I was about to say I support the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm saying completely went then. But in any case, I support the Philadelphia 76ers is what we'll say. So we'll start off with them. We'll kick it off there in that case. A pretty routine win, I'd say, happened and occurred. Have you got anything else to really describe apart from that from this game is what we'd say? Oh, we've got Adam here as well. We can say hello to Adam. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, not really. I feel like this is the one that everyone thought was the biggest foregone conclusion of the playoffs, was that the 76ers should be handling the Nets pretty easily. And I think the only thing I'd say that I was maybe slightly disappointed in with Brooklyn is just a lot of the defense and chasing after, those, especially on the boards as well, and like the second chances, trying to get those second balls. It just seemed like the effort wasn't at 100%, and if you're in the playoffs, you at least want to see that, even if you do feel like they're a massive underdog. I thought maybe they could have put a bit more effort in.
I mean, yeah, I'm not too surprised we went through this in our playoff predictions. Nick Claxton is just way too small to guard Joel Embiid. That was my first major point of concern for this series. He's a small center, and Joel Embiid is like, if he's not your best center, he's the second best. So there you go. And he is different to Jokic in the way that he is predominantly getting his points banging down by the post. He's not really, pulling out for threes or getting involved in the playmaking. He is going to like rough you up for the entirety of the game, as much as he can do anyway. So that was my first major point of concern. I thought they'd have to throw a lot of doubles at him. And then when you come to that, you've got, I think, other players on the Sixers team that can punish you. If you scroll down a bit, Tobias Harris, big game for him, considering his usual output is kind of like, maybe you don't even know he's there for a couple games, which is, not what you want from your max contract player. But I don't mind Tobias Harris this season personally, actually. And then you're seeing James Harden there with not a great shooting night, or not a bad shooting night, but not a great shooting night in terms of scoring. But that playmaking, which he has been doing all season, was just off the charts. And it feels like this one felt, I mean, we'll get to probably the biggest mismatch of them, I guess. But this felt like just like another regular season game. And I agree with Lewis. I don't think that the intensity or the effort was really there with the Nets. I feel like they may know that they're kind of mismatched in this series, and it's kind of expected. It's a team that's been put together like halfway through a season, really. So that's kind of what you'd expect, to be honest.
Yeah. I think with Tobias Harris being that sort of now, he basically has confirmed the fourth role of that team. You've got Embiid, you've got Harden, I'd put Maxey in front of him, and then you've got Tobias Harris. I think maybe being that third unit even was a bit too much pressure to put on him, is essentially what we learned from the past couple of seasons of him being with Philly. So in that fourth role, he can definitely get more of an open shot, and he can sort of, there isn't as much pressure on him is what we've definitely noticed from him.
I mean, it's important how quickly these, like the Sixers, get done with the Nets. You'd maybe say, I'm not sure if the Celtics and the Hawks will be the same thing in terms of, but they'll be wanting to get as much rest as possible and put like not play as many games as possible before they play the Celtics and the Sixers, which they're kind of both probably looking ahead to it, which is why I can see either one of those series, where the Hawks or the Nets slip a game. And I still think that might happen, but this was pretty imperious first appearance.
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you're giving another team 14 offensive rebounds and you're committing 19 turnovers, you're just not winning a game like that. So they've got to step out.
Is there any hope for Brooklyn? Would we say after watching this first game? Obviously, there's you can go over the top with it, but you would expect a response from Brooklyn in game 2. Normally, is what happens.
Yeah, I mean, offensively, they actually looked pretty good, and I think stat-wise, if you look at the efficiency, it's not bad. Mikal Bridges was playing really well. I think in the first half, especially. I can't remember. I think he slowed down a little bit in the second half, but that was because it was a bit of a foregone conclusion, really. Not too bad at halftime, I guess, actually, but they just never looked like, even though the offense was there, they never looked like they were going to have much of a chance in that game. It looked like Philly were just going through the motions to me. So they can get after them, but defensively, it was just a mess. So.
Yeah, I think it pretty much looked to me like Philly were never in top gear as well as a point, which I don't think they need to necessarily do, especially, and that's the comforting thing about these sort of first round series for a team like Philly, for like Boston in the Hawks. I don't think they really need to shift into top gear and realistically go all out, because they should just have too much quality for these sides here. I think in terms of what my big takeaways were, that this series should be done in 4. Like, I think we could have all said this beforehand in any case, but like some of the series, you do get some upsets or injuries that occur. But from this, we would say, I think, that this should be done and dusted within a 4-game stretch. In any case, we'll move on. We'll talk about, like we just mentioned, with the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics. If you are listening to this on the audio version, we have got we're obviously live streaming this one. We've live streamed now the past 2 podcasts that we've done over on our YouTube channel here, and we are running through the box score live as we go through it. So just to show up some stats as what we can always never realistically remember, we're going to go through it in that regard. But we're talking about another comforting win with the Boston Celtics taking on the Hawks. Again, from this game, is there anything that has changed your opinion on how you think this playoff series is going to go? Louis Halpin, I'm going to go to you first.
I mean, I don't think any of us expected the Hawks to be playing the Celtics, because I think we all predicted that the Miami Heat would get this 7th seed. So it doesn't. It's not really a key. I think we might have given the Miami Heat a respectful 1. And I mean, this Hawks team has just been a mess throughout the season. And I'm just looking at those 2 backcourt. The field goal on that, and it's just they just don't really know how to play together very well. And even when Trae Young is deferring, as you see there, he's not taking the most shots in this game for once, and he's done that since, I think, Quinn Snyder's come in. It doesn't look like he's entirely buying. Like, he's giving it up, but he's not entirely buying into playing off ball, like moving about, like someone like Steph would do. That's just like I know he gets compared to him quite unfavorably a lot, but it's just not really working. It just looks like he's giving up the ball and he just stand there and he'll be like, okay, it's my turn in a couple. And so as much as I'm sort of like willing to be like, oh, the Celtics defense it's not bad because it's not been gone this season, but it's not been as imperious as it was towards the second stage of last season. I just think there's some major issues in the way that the Hawks are set up offensively, and obviously defensively. They have their limitations with a guy like Trae. He can be picked on by anyone there. So that's me trying to sort of like focus on the Hawks' weaknesses here, because I think there's got to be some major overturn there in the summer. And we've heard sort of whispers, rumors of they're looking at sort of like how they could maybe move Trae on, because that fit may not exactly be there with Quinn Snyder, and they've given him a lot of money, Quinn Snyder, and he's there for a long time. But they've done well to get the 7th seed. I will say that I was not expecting that whatsoever, but I think we can maybe attribute that to some struggles, you would say. For Jimmy Butler wasn't good in the playing game. Bam Adebayo hasn't been good offensively in the playing game, or really last night either, bar a couple of occasions. So that team's good. I like pretty much every player that got minutes there, but they're just not gelling very well, I don't think.
No, I mean, from what I saw of this, it's just the same sort of thing we've seen in the regular season. I completely agree with you on the Trae Young stance. He just doesn't seem to be buying in. There's something not clicking there at all in regards to whatever is the situation right now. Moving forward, how you solve this? Like you mentioned, Quinn Snyder's getting paid a lot of money, but Trae Young he's their franchise player. He just that is what the situation is with him. I can't see. I'd be very, very surprised if they end up moving him. But I do think as well at the same time, it's probably the only way that they get better is that they move away from him. So it's a juxtaposition there, I suppose. John Collins as well is someone that's always been flirted around with. But from something that we're actually talking about again and the key topic on this podcast in general, Lewis, is there anything that you saw from this game that makes you think otherwise towards this series?
I mean, when someone who didn't watch this game, if they just looked at the final score, 112-99, like, okay, yeah, the Celtics won, but that doesn't do justice to the drubbing that happened in this game. And the reason why it was that at the end was because at half-time the game was over and the Celtics just, you talk about Philly not getting its top gear. Celtics were nowhere near top gear in the second half. They knew the game was over. The Hawks, they would. It wasn't even just that they didn't play well offensively. Even when they were getting looks, it just wasn't falling. So it was kind of a when it rains, it pours sort of situation. I don't think you can really take anything out of that game on the Boston side of things. Everyone expects them to handle the Hawks pretty easily. Maybe not as easy as they did in the first half of that game, but they were just going through the motions, like I said, like Philly were throughout the most of their game. In terms of the Hawks, the one thing I would be interested in is, say Trae was to be shopped by the Hawks, I'd be interested to see what teams would be interested and what his value would actually be, because he's one of those players that needs the right conditions around him to thrive. And you look at teams outside of Atlanta, and actually Atlanta's probably the best place for him. So it'll be strange. It'll be interesting to see what teams would actually go for him and what they'd be willing to give up.
You know which one I heard, which I actually quite liked, and it was it was one involving Dame Lillard going the other way in terms of that keeps the Hawks somewhat competitive, and they went all in getting DeJounte Murray, so that kind of makes sense. And then maybe the Blazers could see what they have with Trae. But like you said, there's always going to be these concerns from every single team that he can't operate without high usage, without a team completely built around him because he's so small and he's the worst, one of the worst defenders in the league. So. And he's going to cost a lot. And, costing you're a franchise player for the last 12 years is quite a hefty toll to take. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. But I do think they should try and explore it.
Is that even a thing that's appealing to Damian Lillard, really? The Hawks? Is that a sizable upgrade? That just seems to me, I mean, if he's getting a DeJounte Murray, comparing a John Collins, it's almost like, I'd say that's worse than what his prime team was in Portland, when he had the CJs and a really good Nurkic back in the day.
But I think it's difficult to find a really good landing spot for him, if I'm quite honest. I know there's the Sixers type of thing. If James Harden goes to Houston, like's rumoured, and then he replaces him there, and then you pair him and Joel Embiid. I've heard that one, but the assets don't really work for me in that. And the Lakers one just doesn't make Lakers in any trade at the moment don't make sense. So that would be one. I mean, look at maybe something to do with the Pelicans, because they've had a pretty sour end to the season considering things, and Zion's. I mean, I'm not sure if either of you saw Zion's press conference, but it wasn't exactly inspiring confidence.
Zion was basically he was like, "I'm going to come back when I want." That's pretty much what he said.
Yeah. He's like, "I'm playing 3v3, but and then CJ done the press conference after the playing game, and he was atrocious the last couple of games. I can't lie, but. He was basically saying about I've needed surgery, I could have been injured, but I turned up and I wanted to lead by example, which does seem to me like a kind of direct shot. Like, this guy he's not. I mean, I think maybe there, of course, there's an injury concern there. There is a health concern. The way he's built, he's going to get injured. But I do think there's also a mentality issue. But this is a wild tangent from the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics anyway. But yeah.
I completely forgot we were talking about that. In any case, we'll swerve away. Is that really a phrase for it?
I can't wait to get to the Western Conference. I will say that.
Yeah, we'll move on to Bing Bong. We'll talk about Bing Bong. This for me, I said this at the start when we did our bracket predictions. This is my favorite series. I think it's going to be the most entertaining. The basketball most definitely won't be the most entertaining, but as the general sort of around everything that comes with it, I think this will be the best. In terms of this game, I think there were some key takeaways to come from this, and primarily, quite a lot of the people that I follow on Twitter when this game was live, I've got quite a lot of Knicks fans that I follow. I think Knicks are they're a huge fan base. You're going to get around the world. They're a huge franchise. It comes with it. The outrage of what I saw from the fact that Thibodeau was playing RJ Barrett over Quentin Grimes in that fourth quarter was unbelievable on the timeline. And the amount of he only took 5 on the box score, but RJ Barrett shooting threes, that is not the one that you want to see in the playoff season. I was actually quite surprised as well to see Quickly was quite poor that game. He'd had a really good sort of last few games in the run up to the playoffs. Julius Randle came back in, shot 3 of 10. I think as we all expected Julius Randle to do.
He was. I'll be fair to him. He did come back from injury. Like he has been injured the last couple of games this season. I mean, he's not a great playoff player historically, but I'll give him that. He was easing his way into. He wasn't that bad, I don't think. Watching the game, I didn't think he was that bad.
No, there wasn't the hero ball that we've sort of come to know of Julius Randle come the playoff time. But realistically, the key takeaway from this game, in my opinion, was that Jalen Brunson is him. The Dallas Mavericks have seriously fumbled the bag in letting Jalen Brunson go. And I also didn't know that Jalen Brunson's contract for the next 3.5 years or whatever it's got left on it, 4 years, it goes down. They're paying him less every year until the end of it. So that contract, if for the Knicks to sort of get as competitive as the Knicks are going to get within the next 3-4 years, that contract is a gold mine for them for it. But that was my key takeaway. Jalen Brunson's him. From the Cavs side of things, you sort of got what you expected. I maybe would have thought, even though he's got 38 points, I maybe would have thought Donovan Mitchell would have been a bit more aggressive in terms of what I was expecting of Donovan Mitchell in this series. But the Mobley-Jared Allen thing is a very strange combination. It's almost akin to Towns and Gobert, but I don't know what one's worse and better, but there you go. That were my key takeaways.
Yeah, Cavs better. Yeah. In terms of a fit, at least. No, maybe not player for player, but for a fit, the Cavs one's definitely better. But as you say, I think the few takeaways was one, obviously Jalen Brunson turning up pretty well in his first playoff game with the Knicks. As it's obviously between him and Randall, but I'll say as the guy. And then I thought Mobley didn't have the greatest game in the world. I think he struggled a little bit. But most of all, I'd say, I think I tweeted this when we said what's the biggest takeaway from some of these game ones, was in these really grindy games, the team that generally ends up winning is either one, they've got the best player who pulls them through, or it's all those high effort plays, grabbing the extra rebounds, getting the second balls. And I just look, and especially it's weird for a team like the Cavs as well. I know Mobley and Jared Allen individually got quite a few boards, but the Cavs got out-rebounded by 13 and gave up 6 more offensive rebounds. And in a game like it was, where it was, shots weren't falling a lot of the time.
Gritty.
It was, gritty. Gritty is the perfect word for it. Those kind of things make all the difference. And so I thought we saw that through quite a lot of the games in those game ones, where maybe it was a bit antsy between the teams, first game of the playoffs, first game of the series in the first round. The teams that had put a bit more effort in had a bit of a higher intensity and were generally out-rebounding the other team, winning those second balls, were the ones that came out with the win.
I think the guy down there, Josh Hart, 8'11", 10 rebounds overall, 5 offensive rebounds, kind of epitomises a bit of grind, really. He's been such a good trade for them. He's kind of like the old school throwback New York Knicks 90s player, where they got those those enforcers basically, and he's always been like that wherever he's gone, but I just don't think he's been in the right landing spots, and I think here is right for him.
Proper swingman.
Yeah. I was quite surprised by this one, because I thought the way that the Knicks would have, like, the calls for them to beat the Cavaliers would be either a true Jalen Brunson explosion, and he played well, but it's not an absolute explosion. Donovan Mitchell, like you, Jalen got 38 points. So if it's not that, I think they'd have had to, like the other players, surely they've got to hit their threes. They haven't done really. Julius Randle going 3 of 10. Mitchell Robinson's obviously never going to take him. RJ Barrett was atrocious, if I'm being nice.
2 and 12 is horrendous.
Yeah. So that didn't really happen either. But I think Julius Randle came in with just about enough. And like I said, he was coming back from injury. So there was even concerns he was going to play. So I think that just got him over the line. And by contrast, the Cavaliers' offense, I did say that front court offense concerned me slightly because Mobley just hasn't developed offensively at all in his second season. And you see the struggles in terms of space, and Okoro can't hit a shot. That's not I think he hit a clutch winner a couple months ago, so I'm not going to say he can't hit a shot, but he's not consistent whatsoever, and that small forward has always been a bit of a problem position for them. So Donovan Mitchell, he done what I think should do. I think we are going to need a bit more from Garland there, and I think he can do it because I don't think the Knicks have really anyone that can stop him when he's in his pomp. But I just don't think, 7 of 13, that's a good game, but I think he needs to up the aggression a little bit more. I don't think he needs to take this back seat in terms of he's the playmaker, Donovan Mitchell as a scorer. I mean, he's not even getting the play. Is that one assist there from
one assist for Garland? Yeah,
I think there needs to be like a little bit more Garland in here. There needs to be someone else apart from Donovan Mitchell that's scoring the ball on like a high volume, really, because I think that's the cause for them to beat. They just got her out. Like the Knicks can only go up so much offensively. Like I said, I think it's a big game from Julius Randle. If they hit all their threes, they hit all their threes. The other players, that's fine. But I think the Cavs has the potential to blow them out the water offensively. Those two backcourt players can anyway. But Karis LeVert, that's not a great box score either. So I'm not too worried about this. I feel like the Cavs will come away with it eventually. Just need to work a couple of kinks out. But that being said, Julius Randle will get more comfortable with his health going into this, as the series progresses, you would expect anyway. So that's pretty big to take out the home court advantage in game one.
Indeed. Now, the main one for me was the Karis LeVert side of things. I was expecting a bit more production from a Karis LeVert. I know he's only got 18 minutes, but 1 of 7 is terrible. And the fact that Ricky Rubio,
how's he packing that in?
Yeah, the fact that Ricky Rubio is getting any minutes in a playoff game in 2023 is quite funny to me. Is all I'll say for it. In any case, we'll move on. They were the games. Oh no, we had one more on Saturday night. We had the Warriors Kings. We'll dive through that now as well. Nice. The beam. This was probably the most entertaining one of the night in terms of a competitive game that we had. Was it a surprise? I would argue no, potentially. You'd expect the Kings to come out strong, first playoff game in 17 years, albeit it is against the defending champions, but you'd have expected a big performance. I stayed up. I managed to get to the first half of this game, and watching that, De'Aaron Fox had not been very good. So when I woke up and saw that he'd scored 38 points, I was extremely shocked on that basis. But as Louis alluded to me in the Swingman group chat that we've got, it is swipe of the Fox. It's clutch time. He'll always save himself for the fourth, and he did indeed. From this series, I wouldn't say this necessarily taught me anything of how I'd think the rest of the playoffs are going to go in this series, per se. I would have expected this game to have gone in some form like this. The only thing I will say is that when Wiggins, and I know we played 28 minutes, but when Wiggins essentially comes back into this starting 5 unit and up to speed properly, he is going to be a huge factor in this playoff series for them, because if they take away a Kevon Looney or take away some of Draymond's minutes and put Wiggins in there when he's fully 100% back, it's going to be a huge upside for them.
Yeah, I mean, Wiggins probably won't have another shooting night like he did from 3. They did that game. He was really poor shooting from the 3. Sabonis as well didn't have a particularly good game. I think the biggest takeaway from this one was, we wanted to see De'Aaron Fox. I think statistical wise, he was the number 1 clutch player in the regular season. What would he do come playoff time? And first game, fourth quarter, he performed very well. I will say the last few minutes, he was bricking a little bit, but I can't remember, it was either 12 or 14 he got in the fourth quarter. So he really helped drive them home. The last shot Steph took, I've seen a few people talk about that. It was a bit of a weird one. He did off one leg when he probably had time to set himself. But I mean, it's Steph, so you just live and die by his decision making. Where he does, you trust him in the playoffs. That one didn't fall. If it falls, everyone's saying it's an amazing shot. So I wouldn't look too much into that. But I think it was really important that the Kings got this first win to kind of, and not announce themselves, but make sure. I feel like if the Warriors took this first game, then maybe that momentum would have carried on throughout the series, and they could have not got this done quick, but maybe, trying to think of the words to say, the Kings might be a bit stunned by it and never recover because of how
Smash the
new
light bulb
players
on the
and
beam.
franchise
Yeah,
is.
that's what they would have done.
Yeah, I think it was really important they got this win to ground themselves in this series and know that they can compete with this team. The regular season isn't something to just take no notice of. They are the third seed. They should be a tough test. Even though I still think the Warriors are gonna win the series, that they and especially Fox showed that they're not going to be taken lightly.
Yeah, but they had to win this game one because of the advantages of obviously home court is a big one, but the atmosphere in Sacramento was pretty electric. Before they'd even lighted the beam, it was electric. And so in that type of atmosphere, I felt like it was just necessary for them to get that win because otherwise, like Lewis said, I think it could have really like burst the balloon a little bit. So it was good they got it done. Obviously, like you said, I think they done a pretty decent job on Fox in the first half, in fairness, but second half, particularly fourth quarter, lights out. Malik Monk was unbelievable. Like 32 points in 29 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that kind of made up for the fact that Herter didn't have a great game. Keegan Murray as well.
Red Velvet was a big disappointment to me. He
Yeah.
let me down on a little parlay I had going, but that's you was expecting one of the guys to necessarily not perform. It's what normally happens on these playoff teams in any case at the starting five. Someone is going to have an off night. It normally does happen, but I was surprised it was Kevin Herter that. Also, I mean, the fact that he only took 5 threes was quite surprising to me. I thought they'd have been looking for him to chuck it up big time against the Warriors defense.
And he's been deep in the playoffs before, so it's not like this is a new experience for him, which it is for guys like Fox. So yeah, that was interesting. I think the way that I just view this series is that both of these teams are great offensively. It's just that I feel like the Warriors can elevate their defense to a level that the Kings can't, and that will eventually get them across the line. If it goes to a game 7, I think the bets are kind of off. But I think the Warriors, if anyone, are quite well equipped to deal with like a big atmosphere in a game 7, if I'm quite honest, and shut up the crowd a little bit, because you can hear when Steph's hitting some of those shots, there's just like groan.
It takes the absolute life out of the arena when Steph gets cooking for it.
I was going to say, I mean, Sabonis didn't have a great scoring game, obviously, but those rebounds are big. And because the Warriors are a small team, you need to capitalize on that. So he'd done his job in that respect.
That was going to be my thing from it. And it's not the juiciest of points, but it's more that the first half, and when I watched this, when they took Sabonis sort of out of the game and he got some rests, they've been bringing in Alex Len. And he'd been getting some minutes towards the back end of the season, and he'd got trusted in the rotation. And he'd come in, and in like 10 minutes, what did he play? 13 minutes, he got 7 rebounds from it. Like every single possession, there's no one on the Warriors that can in any way out rebound him if he goes for it and it falls to him. So that was a big, big side effect from the fact that he just got brought in, and any time there was a shot that was missed, it was Alex Lenz, and he just took it up. Obviously, you're not going to play him towards the back end when you've got Sabonis, but as one of those players that can come in for them, he was a big asset to necessarily have. And it's something where it's obvious everyone knows about the weakness of the Warriors is their size and how it goes, and it's you live by it and you die by it. I don't think they'll necessarily die by Alex Len getting rebounds, but it was a factor in this game, especially in the first half. But no, we'll move away from this one. So I think they were the first 4 games that we had on Saturday night. We'll jump over onto Sunday night here. And to start it off, we had a lovely little Lakers-Grizzlies matchup. As Louis said, he's a humongous LA Lakers fan and everything that they stand for. They did get the dub. Anthony Davis did have an injury scare. He said that he couldn't move his arm, and
He
then
had two.
5 minutes.
He had two injury scares.
What was the second one? I can't even remember the second one.
No, the second one was the arm, but he had another one earlier on.
Oh, the start of the game,
yeah.
The second one was the main one though, where he came out of it claiming that he couldn't move his arm, and then I got an update being like he's not going to return to the game, and then immediately after he was like probable to return. So I was like, okay, right, great. And to be fair to Anthony Davis, he had a tremendous game, not necessarily his most stellar on an offensive end, but on the defensive side, 12 boards and 7 blocks, including, what was the steals? 3 steals as well. You're not really going to turn a blind eye to that defensive production from AD. It wasn't a LeBron James vintage game either, and it wasn't really a D'Angelo Russell masterclass. Not that I don't know if we've really ever seen some of them in the playoffs. It was mainly a Rui Hachimura and an Austin Reeves show. That was what we come from and what we saw in this game. And this is akin to Rob Pelinka and the trades that he made to get this team into a much better state post Westbrook era. And we saw this come to fruition. What I want to say to you two, and this is the cause of this podcast as is, did you learn anything from this game that has changed your opinion on how this series is going to go? Lewis, I'll go to you first.
It's not changed my opinion because I picked the Lakers to beat the Grizzlies, but I was quite surprised with how much confidence LeBron had in his teammates, especially Austin Reeves with handling the ball, but him and Rui scoring late to defer to them, because it wasn't just like they were taking turns. LeBron was literally just deferring and almost not sitting, obviously, but just almost out of play. Yeah,
resting in game.
Literally just not taking part in some of the offense and trusting Reeves and Rui to get it done while they had the hot hand. And I think it goes to show what kind of a leader LeBron is. And I know Rui talked about it after, I think it was after, but he said it regardless, about how much confidence LeBron's given him to just keep shooting the ball and go for it. And I think he is one of those players where he can have these nights where he just goes off. And you look down this Lakers lineup, and they've got them littered throughout it. They've really got a squad now. Schroeder can go off. D'Lo can go off. We've seen Austin Reeves since the trade deadline has been able to do it consistently. And I think that's why LeBron trusts him so much. Got Malik Beasley as well, who didn't really do much at all this game. But they've got players now where AD and LeBron, if they are having a slower game, well, LeBron had a pretty slow game, especially in the first half. He picked it up shooting a bit after eventually. Obviously, AD might not have had a monster offensive night, but defensively he was great. But if they have these pieces that can show up, and a lot of them as well, so it can be consistent, and I think this Lakers team can go quite far in this playoffs.
Yeah, I'm kind of sort of piggybacking on Lewis's opinion because although I think for the Rui type of thing, he's not really been good since they traded for him. This was kind of a turn up.
Rui's not having another game like this. Rui ain't having.
I would suspect so, but it's nice that he can do it, and you know that there is the possibility there. For example, Malik Beasley's down there. Right? He can have a game like this on some occasions, and he can be like that box score will show you right there, 0 points and then 0 for 2. But he's not playing very many minutes in fairness. But Dennis Schroeder can do something like that. The one I'm really surprised about is Austin Reeves, because I did admit in the group chat I thought he may be a slight bit of a meme, or maybe like a Lakers overrating of a role player, like the Taylor Horton Tucker stuff. And Caruso's gone on to have a pretty decent career as well. But at the start, he had some this guy wouldn't get covered if he was playing for the Detroit Pistons type of stuff. But he was just he plays with so much confidence. He just completely lights out. It was a lovely. I mean, just excusing some of the shots there, he had a lovely, nice little behind the back pass, I think, to Rui for one of those threes. And yeah, when LeBron defers a bit, I feel like it's an active choice. Like either, he's 38, he might be, saving himself a little bit, which is fair enough because he had to kind of have a big game in the play-in. Or he just feels that other players are in the spots, to get him across the line. With AD, I feel like it's more of a case of he can't make himself available. And that's the one thing I would say is that he's always had this a little bit where he wanted him to be a little bit more aggressive, but I do think he kind of needs to be force-fed shots. And I think, he could have gone for a bigger game if that were the case, but it didn't matter in the end, obviously, and he was great defensively. And I think he benefited from the fact that the Grizzlies just had some really strange offensive decisions in terms of going straight at him, and he's one of the best defensive players in the league. But yeah, going at it from a Memphis perspective, I think you kind of have to live with Rui Hachimura beats you. I think you do have to focus on the players that are world class, like high caliber all NBA athletes. But maybe with the miss of Steven Adams for one, which forces Jaren Jackson to play center, I thought they lost out on a lot of rebounds because of that, because it reduces the overall size of their team. If Jaren's going for a block or something like that, there's no one there to get a rebound, that type of thing. So the loss of him, Brandon Clark as well. And, they've lost a couple of guys there. DeAnthony Melton is obviously at the Sixers now. It does look like the team is just a couple shot. Like, there's a couple guys there that are playing big minutes that I just don't think are quite up to scratch if you're comparing the Lakers and the Grizzlies, which is something that surprised me because that's just not what I would have expected. And this is a really big win because the Grizzlies went, I believe, 35-6 or something at home this season in the regular season. They don't really lose at home very often. So it spells good things. And Ja Morant obviously got injured in the game as well. We'll keep an eye on that. But that's like the Anthony Davis thing. That's kind of, if he goes down, you're like, okay, what's this then? This is a game 2 miss or whatever.
Yeah, the ironic thing I saw from that was, Ja Morant was a bit weird in that game anyway. It was nowhere near as aggressive as I thought Ja Morant was going to be.
That's definitely because of the hand, though. Definitely.
Yeah. The ironic thing that I saw was that he injured his shooting hand, and it was what arms that and all this sort of stuff that came from it. But the whole thing with the Grizzlies, I completely agree in terms of the Steven Adams sort of things. I would still expect them to put up a bit more of a fight. But like you said, if you get beat by an Austin Reeves sort of hot hand and a Rui Hachimura gamer, then you can't really bemoan yourself too much. You just have to sort of live with that. They're not going to put up these numbers again. They might get close in one of these games, but if Rui Hachimura puts up another 11 of 14, 5 and 6 night, I'd be very, very surprised in this series. I can't lie. But at the end of the day, if Ja Morant comes back Wednesday, he's fit and firing again, then the Grizzlies still have every chance of taking this to 7. But it is a huge, huge win for the Lakers on game 1.
I mean, Jaren was great as well, offensively anyway. He really asserted himself offensively, which is what I think we've been wanting to see from him. And so was Desmond Bain. 3 out of 10 3-point shooting isn't great reading, but he was one of the... And the overall field goal, 6 of 18 isn't great, but he was one of the guys that I felt at least somewhat confident. Like I said this, I think a Dylan Brooks pull-up 3, like 22, you've only got like 2 seconds into the shot clock, is just absolutely atrocious. I'll live with that shot every day of the week, let alone a Rui Hachimura 29 gamer. That is easily lived with. So
the thing I kept noticing as well is, and obviously this is going to be his job, and LeBron will have dealt with players like this for countless seasons throughout the years. But Dylan Brooks' whole sort of mantra of that game was, I'm just going to be really, really annoying to LeBron the entire game, get in his face every possession, every inbound. I'm just going to jump on LeBron and annoy him and get in his ear. And I just think like LeBron could just sort of sit there that night and just go, well, I mean, the 2 guys that we brought in are absolutely cooking you. So he didn't have to get involved. I don't think LeBron is going to sit back necessarily again the next game. If they're down 10, LeBron's not going to go, I trust Rui to hit this 3. He's not going to do that.
Well, I think the one thing with LeBron is he reads the game so well, and he reacts to how the game is flowing, who's hot, who's not, and he can pick those players out and feed them the ball better than pretty much anyone else in the NBA. And I'll say about the Dylan Brooks thing, you can be in as annoying as you want, but if you're not very good in the game, then it doesn't matter, and he wasn't very good in that game.
No.
I think, as you say, the biggest issues for Memphis now is, one, Ja Morant's availability. If he's not there for the next game and then they lose that, I don't think there's any coming back from that, to be honest. And with Steven Adams being out, they just don't have the size to deal with a healthy Anthony Davis, which is game by game. But if AD's fit and firing and Steven Adams is out, it's tough to see the Grizzlies being able to overcome it, to be honest.
Indeed. Right, we'll move away from that. That was the first game of last night. And we'll go into arguably the biggest shock of the start of the playoffs, I would say. Miami Heat beating the Bucks 130 to 117. There was a lot of things that happened in this game for this that occurred. Primarily, the main one, Giannis Antetokounmpo had a big fall, landed on his derriere, shall we say, and was out of the game. I think it was a lower back contusion, officially, is what they pronounced it as, but wasn't able to continue, left the game. And also, Tyler Hero, a little bit later on, went for a loose ball, and I don't actually know how he officially done it. Went for a loose ball and sort of like clawed the floor and must have broke his hand in that regard. Went to run off the court. Eric Spoelstra was like, absolutely not, space the floor for us. Gabe Vincent didn't get the memo, launched him the ball, and he still took a three, although he just about missed it. The main concern on this game and how this game was won, though, was a Jimmy Butler heritage performance, shall we say, in the playoffs. This is what we come to almost expect now of Jimmy Butler in these games. He just takes over and runs everything for Miami. We didn't get a Max Struss performance that we got from the Heat, but is there anything from this series in this game that has changed your opinions? And I fear they may be this one. If there was going to be any, there may be. Louis Halpin, I'm going to go to you first this time.
I mean, obviously, the amount of games will come down to how healthy Giannis is. I still think the Bucks would have enough to beat the Heat, even without him. It would obviously take a lot more from the supporting cast. You know, Chris Middleton came in and done a decent job in his absence, but Drew Holiday had one of his games, which he's prone to have sometimes offensively, where he's just not really that type of point guard in terms of generating his own shot. He's better feeding off someone else. So I still think they have enough to beat him, because I don't see the Heat going for 130 points a couple games, because their offense, you know, historically isn't great. But this is just the exact set. You fought all season for a first seed, and you played your guys, and you want to get that that nice matchup, and then you come up against the Miami Heat, and you're like, oh god, like, because no, they're not been great this season, but they've got they just don't die. They're like, what was it they said about Rasputin when they shot him, they strangled him and they poisoned him or something, and he still survived or something like that. They're a bit like that, where they just keep coming. And Jimmy Butler is prone to have a gamer. Bam Adebayo was good in this game after having absolutely putrid playing against the Hawks anyway. So, the Heat and the Bucks have played each other a couple of times in the last couple of years, and they've got some tools to make it a bit hard on, Giannis in particular. That they can lock in defensively, but it's the offense that is always, I think, the issue over here. And that scoring number for the Heat will drop down, and I think the Bucks one will stay about steady, and that will get them across if Giannis isn't to play for the rest of the series. But I don't know. I'm not sure if you two have heard any updates about Giannis's health. I know Ja Morant was, like we said, a bit of a X-ray negative type of thing, but I'm not sure if we know anything about Giannis yet.
I don't think there's anything officially confirmed, but I mean, from what it looked like, he might miss. So he might be on a minutes restriction for the next game, but then be fine for game 3. Is what I would sort of imagine of that particular injury that I saw. The only thing I will say is that, I mean, when you look at this here, the thing that we mentioned, and even despite how good Jimmy Butler is, and I could very easily bet on Jimmy Butler getting 30 points for every single game that goes on in this series. I think he's that good, and he can get his own shot to that extent, or make his own scoring positions wherever he goes on the floor for it. I could go Jimmy Butler will get 30 each night. The issue is that, one, I don't think Miami will shoot 60% from free again, and I don't think there's not a chance in hell that the Bucks are going to shoot 24% on 11:45.
Yeah.
So the fact that it took Giannis being out, the Heat to have one of their best shooting nights, the Bucks have one of their worst, and a Jimmy Butler 35-point sort of unbelievable game with 11 assists, and that's only how they beat them, is the slight cause there, but it's what it is.
You got some contributions there from people like Kevin Love, and I think Duncan Robinson's finally got his 60 million.
Well, Duncan Robinson come in when Tyler Hero went, made a 3, and they was like, right, go sit back down, you're done there.
Yeah, they got just contributions from places that you just wouldn't expect a little bit. So it's a bit of a turn up, if we're quite honest.
Yeah, Kevin Love shooting 4 of 7 from free is after shooting, I think, 28% from free for the season. It was a bit of a turn off for the books, that one. I mean, the two things I'll say is, one, obviously Giannis went out, so you can't really look too much into this game, even though the Heat took the win. As you say, it's surprising that the Heat won. Yes, in context of Giannis being out, no, because the Bucks are a good team, and even if Giannis was out, they could get the win. But they're missing the best player in the NBA. So what are you going to do? The one thing I'd say that I took from this game was, albeit Giannis was out, yes, but I like the fact that when the Bucks were in the zone defense, Jimmy was just attacking, going out of the room, going at Brook Lopez, and he was finding so much success doing it that maybe it'll force the Bucks to change it up, react differently, or if they can't, then maybe that's something he can look to throughout the series that will help them, especially if Giannis can't make the next game, or if he's on a minute restriction for the next one or two. Maybe get them to take another game and extend the series. I still think the Bucks are going to win, because I don't think it's too bad, the injury. I think Giannis will come back and the Bucks will be able to overwhelm the Heat eventually. But as you say, the Heat are one of those teams that you have to keep grinding them down and then finally put them away. They're not someone that's going to go down immediately.
No, I mean, like we said with Kevin Love as well. I mean, watching Kevin Love, you can when you watch LeBron James, if you didn't know he was 38, I wouldn't say you'd guess he's 38. When you watch Kevin Love, you can very much believe he's like 35. That's what I'll say. So I'm not sure how many minutes they're going to be able to lean on him in these sort of back-to-backs. But if Giannis is out, this could go to sort of 6. And I think when we said originally, if the Heat were this seed and they got the Bucks, we said that this could be a 5-game series, that they might snatch a game at home or something like that, like the third game. To get the first one, especially with the Bucks' home record and the Heat's away record this year, is surprising. And regardless of Giannis being there or not, I mean, even when he went down, I said that I still think, they've got enough to win this game just from Chris Middleton, Brolo, and everything like that. But look, I mean, it just makes it a bit more exciting now. That's the thing that I'd like to see, because you think Jimmy Butler is the kind of guy and the kind of player where now he's looking at this next game that's coming up and he's thinking, if we get the second win here, they're right on the back foot and we can go for their throats. And that's how Jimmy Butler will go for it. And he's one of the guys that, I mean, I like Jimmy Butler. This is known from before, but he's one of the guys that will really, really push and go for it, even though it's a first rounder and stuff like that. But we'll move on from this game. We'll switch it over into the third one. One of the sort of more, a bit similar to the Knicks and Cavs, shall we say, but of an uptick in quality. I don't think you'd disagree with me on, is the Clippers and Suns series that we had here. Any key takeaways that you had from this one, Louis Halpin? I'll go to you first.
So this is my favourite one. Also very, very surprising. I just did not expect this. I thought it might even be a sweep for the Suns going into it, just because I thought without Paul George, they just don't have enough offensively to keep up with that Suns offense. So little did I know, the key to beating the Suns' great offense was Russell Westbrook going 3 of 19. And it was just like one of the, the Russ is obviously quite a, what's the word I'm looking for? Very divisive individual. That's not the exact word I was looking for, but yeah. And it's so rare that like in this one game, both of these players, both of these opinions can be proved right, because he was just absolutely horrific on the offensive end. But you cannot deny, without him on that court, they don't win that game. He was just, his energy was just like unbelievable. I think KD was obviously a little bit stifled by it. Chris Paul. I mean, Devin Booker clearly at the end, that massive play where he blocks Devin Booker, hits it off of him, and they get the ball
Huge.
back. Yeah. Right after he's missed a massive 3, which they've had to rebound. But no, let's just take that out of account. I just didn't think this was in him anymore, if I'm quite honest. He looks, I mean, that Lakers run was obviously quite hard on him. And he talked afterwards about, the importance of having like a team or a coach that that will give him the confidence, even if like he's missing shots. So, that sort of confidence that they've given him is clearly transmitted, and he's making an impact on the court regardless of that just horrific box score in terms of shooting. But yeah, on the Suns side, I just think there was too much Chris Paul. I think there was too much DeAndre Ayton and not enough KD and Devin Booker, if I'm quite honest. At the end of that game, it should be give the ball to KD, let him, it should be KD Kawhi, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be, getting, DeAndre Ayton coming for an ISO. I'm sorry, he had a decent game, but I just don't want to see that. I don't think Suns fans want to see that either. You want the guy that you traded the boat for. And so that's what I'll take away. But I'm intrigued how the series develops a little bit. I don't think my opinion is not changing at all, really. But I just feel like they need to make adjustments, basically, the Suns, in the way that they're approaching this offense. And that is, I think, a bit of a sort of a pitfall of them only playing 7 games together in the regular season.
Totally. Before I jump to you, Lewis, we'll just quickly. Morris has asked, which role players who aren't in the rotation right now could get there because of injuries or tactical change? In this particular playoff series, I mean, the fact that Landry Shamet has got 24 minutes against the Clippers is arguably outrageous behavior from the Phoenix Suns. But in terms of on the Clippers side, if Nicholas Batum or Kawhi go down, I could very easily see them go into Marcus Morris Sr. He's just got a lot of background and prior playoff experience that we've got from there. From other particular series, if there's any you want to know, give us a shout and we'll see what we can do about it. But from this one, I would say Marcus Morris Sr. And also, I'd potentially expect a bit more from Josh Okogie going forward as well. Good question that's just got literally coming here. Why do you guys reckon Okogie was given so little time for the Suns? Gabriel, honestly, from what I didn't know he got 24 minutes. I know he played a lot and he was in on the fourth quarter. The fact that Landry Shamet's playing 24 was outrageous. I couldn't believe that whatsoever. Okogie has been not their sixth man that's come in, but has definitely been part of that strong second unit and sometimes even been slid into the first one that's been playing with Booker or Paul or KD. So the fact that he got such little minutes, I wouldn't say it's a huge concern, but obviously in moving forward, you've got to look at the first game of these series. You normally get an insight into a coach's sort of tactical decision. But considering they lost, this will not be the minutes rotations that will go again. They will change things up, especially towards the fourth. So that's how I'd go from it. But moving back to you, Lewis, how was what were your key takeaways from this game in particular?
Yeah, well, just quickly, as you say, Landry Shamet, 24 minutes and not a lot of production. But I think the last play of this game, outside of a couple other things, really epitomised the whole thing in that just that extra effort. You see Booker complaining about getting fouled. Meanwhile, Westbrook's chasing the ball and manages to get to throw it at Devin so they can get the ball back. And just throughout the game, it almost felt like, as you say, even though he was horrendous offensively, Westbrook, just the energy that he supplied invigorated the entire team. And you just look, I know you talked about DeAndre Ayton, Louis, and how he had a decent game. I know he got 18 and 8, but if you actually watched him in the game, he just doesn't play to his size. And I'm not going to say he's soft, but a lot of people say he plays soft, but it's just the energy. It's almost like he switches off sometimes. And you just look at the box scores, and I know I've said it quite a lot in all these games, but giving up 9 offensive rebounds to the other team, it's just so many second chance points that you're putting up on offer for the other team. And when you put that extra energy in and you've got someone like a Kawhi Leonard dropping 38, even with the Westbrook offensive, horror show, they managed to come out with a win. And the other thing I would add that I think is a good point you made is Kevin Durant has to get more of the ball and take more shots in the second half and in that fourth quarter. I know there was a period, I think it was early in the second half. It was either early in the second half or in the second quarter where he went on a nice run, but he just needed to take more shots and get given more of the ball late on in that game. Because your answer to a Kawhi Leonard is Kevin Durant to go, Louis, to go toe to toe, to have a chance of winning that game, giving up the balls that you did. It's hard to come back from those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, the issue with it, and obviously, like we're seeing here, Kawhi Leonard took 24 shots on the night. Eric Gordon was quite good, especially for the production you'd expect out of an Eric Gordon. Russ Westbrook, even though he went 3 of 19, he had I would say he had a good game primarily because of the defensive work that he did on Kevin Durant. And that's what Russell Westbrook does. Every time he plays Kevin Durant, he's like a bee that's going to get in his face and not give him a single second to sort of get into his motions and starting to get into his jam. But when you look at this here, I know that you can make these excuses, and that if Kevin Durant's getting double teamed or if Booker's getting double teamed, then you have to get these guys involved. The ball cannot be spread this much. It really can't, not for the Suns in this case. I know you're saying that Kevin Durant needs to take more shots. This is where I was going to see Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. You want them taking minimum 20 shots a game. In a game of this magnitude, I'd say. You don't want Torrey Craig taking 3 less shots than Kevin Durant. You don't. That's not what you've made these moves for. That's not how it's going to work. Chris Paul, again, I know he's coming towards the back end of sort of what he is now, but I'd still expect more from Chris Paul. If this is going to be... We've kept saying that it's his last chance saloon, I think, now for like 2 or 3 postseasons. But I really can't see another chance beyond this year now. It's getting to the point where, has he got it in the tank for him? Do Phoenix trust him to be that sort of main point of call next year if they're moving forward with Kevin Durant and Booker? I can't see Chris Paul being that guy. And especially for the Clippers series, like I like guys that are playing against old sort of teams and franchises, and they're going to have it in their heads for it. And I just expected a bit more from CP3. But look, this is going to be a long series. I think I said 6 originally for this. I didn't have the sweep for it. I was surprised in the manner of which they've lost this game. But look, stuff like this happens. When Kawhi Leonard is an all-timer, Kawhi is a champion for a reason. He was like Toronto Kawhi is what we saw last night. So if he keeps going like this, I mean, I'm expecting a huge reaction from the Suns the next game is all I'll say.
Really, especially I'm looking for Ayton to step up, because if he performs like this, say the Suns, I know he got 18 and 8, but when you watch the game, he just needs to have a much higher intensity and much more effort throughout it. If he plays like he did and they come up against, say, the Nuggets next, good luck trying to win that series.
He got bullied by Zubac, if we're being fair, and by Plumlee when he was. I like some Plumlee minutes actually, if I'm being, which is not something.
Plumlee's a good player.
Yeah,
Plumlee's a good player.
So I think that is key, but they need to make major adjustments to get KD more shots, and I think that's our overall takeaway.
Yeah, it's look at Trippy Tom says Paul ain't getting a ring. Better believe that. I mean, he hasn't got one, so it's not hard to go against that. We are going to believe you on that one. We thought with a Kevin Durant Booker sort of going off of it, he'll. Is this Chris Paul's best chance? Are we going to say this every year? But
this year with KD, definitely. Yeah.
The thing is it?
Go on.
Is it just not a little bit hollow that he is like the 3rd or 4th best player on the team? And I think I'm being quite generous if I'm saying I do think I'd probably prefer, if I was picking him, I'd probably have him over Ayton, but he's just such in a reduced capacity at the moment. I'm not saying his looks that he got in those shots were bad. I just don't think he has it in him anymore, actually. And it's a bit like, he got his ring if he does get his ring. I agree with Trippy Ayton. I don't think they're getting the ring. But it's like not a sympathy ring. It's just a bit like it's not like he's won it at the peak and he's the best player in the team.
It's definitely not a sympathy ring. Like if he comes off of a triple double game 1, he's not at that sort of Jeremy Lin sitting at the back of a bench era. But he's more of it isn't at his prime, but he's still definitely an influence on this side.
Yeah, he's definitely contributing to the team, and I will say Trippy as well. I think summed up what I was trying to say perfectly with the 18 and 8 wasn't felt at all. I think that is the best way to sum up my feelings towards Ayton in that game.
Yeah, completely. Right, we'll move away from this one and we'll move on to this is the final game of the first round.
God,
isn't it?
Let's get this done with.
And this will be a quick one, I think it's going to be. Timberwolves Nuggets. Timberwolves lost by 29. This game was pretty much a whitewash, is what we can describe this as. An absolute masterclass in production from Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, and solidifying the excellence in the trade. Yeah, but I think more of the, whenever you're going to talk about these games in particular, the issue is whenever they lose, if Anthony Edwards drops 10 points, but Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns go for 19 combined, that's what's going to get looked at. And you don't look at Rudy for points, don't get me wrong, but I was expecting a lot more from Karl Anthony Towns. The issue is is that neither of these guys can defend the three, and then neither of them are good enough aggressively on offense, especially when you've got Nikola Jokic, who on the defensive end at the minute is just, you could go all over him. If Karl Anthony Towns had a bit of aggression in him, they could really, really go for it. But unfortunately, when you're playing 2 7-footers that don't want to attack the rim, this is the issue that the Timberwolves are seeing to have right now.
Yeah,
2 a.m. here in, is it the Philippines? I want to say maybe. It's not going to be Philadelphia. So have a good cast. Needed sleep. Yeah, get some sleep, man. Get some sleep. Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah.
Lewis, how was your thoughts on this?
If I'd sum this game up, I think the biggest issue for the Timberwolves is I would say this game felt easy for the Nuggets. And I mean really easy. Jokic didn't even have a big game. He was just going through the motions. I know we said going through motions a lot, but he was really going through the motions. There was a couple of possessions where he was almost walking up to the basket and just nonchalantly. And I think he ended up with 13 points, and they won this easily.
Yeah,
that is not a good sign. The Nuggets got whatever they wanted, and the Timberwolves just could not get going. And I'm not gonna lie, this game, I think this is going to be a sweep this series.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive fit just doesn't work with. I mean, it's just taking out the defense, because in theory, you'd think as like a matchup like this where the Timberwolves have 2 bigs or whatever, you at least grind Jokic down a little bit. Maybe it makes it a little bit harder on him. In theory, defensively, this is a series that could maybe work for the Wolves, but it doesn't, because Rudy's not as good as he was defensively, and it just like they haven't really figured out where they all need to be, and it just doesn't fit very well. Basically, that's the end of the day. The Rudy Gobert trade hasn't worked because those players don't fit very well together. On the offensive end, it's just like Towns isn't a power forward; he's a center, and I think they're at the best when they've got the spacing where Towns is a center and Anthony Edwards was free to sort of like make cuts, use that spacing that's provided by Towns. And yeah, you do what he does best, which is drive towards the basket, win fouls, get points, whatever. Don't get me wrong. If they'd have been facing these last year without Gobert, say if we had last year's Timberwolves team and this year's Nuggets team, I think it would be a similar type of outcome. But hey, they gave up a lot for Rudy Gobert, and it's just not gone very well. So yeah, quite disappointing considering I thought that. In both playing games, I don't think the Timberwolves were close off beating the Lakers actually in the first playing game, and they obviously absolutely dominated the Thunder, who just don't have anyone over the head like the size of like 6'7". I feel like so that was a bit of a mismatch there, but this was painful to watch, and I don't think it's going to get much better. It's a bit sort of like put it at the old dog that needs to be. The old wolf that needs to be put down, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was just that the Nuggets didn't play particularly well. None of their best players had an amazing game, and they still won by 29. It's just like, what's going to happen when they start having good games? The one thing I will say is you said before about it maybe being the same in the previous year if they were matched up again. I think the difference is if Jamal Murray or Jokic don't have a stellar game last year, the pieces around them aren't as good, as anywhere near as good as they are this year. Whereas this year, they've got a lot of players that can give them production. I can't remember what the tweet was that I looked at today, but it was going through some of the players on the Nuggets that were playoff rotational pieces last season, and this season they're not getting minutes for lower seeded teams, and I think. There's a couple that aren't even in the league. So I think there is a big difference with the whole unit that the Nuggets have got this time. And then obviously they've got their star players in Jokic, in Murray, and also MPJ as that third option as well.
Yeah, I mean, from this series is done like this, and we can say this about some of the other ones, but this one is completely done. There isn't going to be a Miami Bucks sort of upset potentially on the cards. The Timberwolves aren't going to come back in game 2 and shock everyone. This it's not the worst kept secret in the world. The Gobert deal doesn't work. It doesn't work for the Timberwolves and how they play. Even with when Towns was out, you can see that Anthony Edwards is the future of this franchise. He's going to be the one that is the key man. And it doesn't work when you play both Towns and Gobert. You can play Gobert with him or you can play Towns with him, and you have different sort of roles and plays that you can run off that. but it only works with one of them. It doesn't work with two. I don't know what the Timberwolves answer is going to be necessarily to this, unless they move Gobert to a second unit center and they share the minutes in that regard. But on the floor at the same time together, it doesn't work. It's never going to work, and it's just one of these things. It's when you come to playoff basketball like this, you can't play two guys like that. It doesn't work.
It almost reminds me of when, obviously they're different players completely, but it reminds me of when Philly tried to run Embiid and Horford, and everyone was prospecting a great season for him, and then when it actually came to it, people realised, you know what, actually Al Horford's never played this role in
power forward, and
it just doesn't work. But then you go to Boston and you see them run with Robert Williams and Horford, and just because of the way they match and the way the Celtics defend, it works very well. So it's all about the fit rather than just, you know, taking a couple players and seeing what sticks. And I think people a lot of the time undervalue how much the fit between players makes such a difference, rather than just putting the best players you can think of together.
Well, it's that, but as well, like if you're going to run 2 7-foot guys, neither of them are aggressive on the offensive end. Neither are aggressive. Like, you can't play against Nikola Jokic, who on the defensive end is not trying at all, and come out of there with 6 trips to the line. You can't get 3 fouls off 2 7-footers. Like, if you're going to run with that, you need to push one of them on a smaller guy that's in the Denver side, put him on Porter or MPJ and bully him. But they don't do it because that's just not the players that they are for the size that they are, and that's fundamentally, I think, one of the key issues that roll with these two from it. But it's going to be if they get a game, I'll be shocked. If this is I'm expecting this to go 4 now. If this is a 4-0 sweep, I don't know what the Timberwolves off season is going to look like, but it ain't going to be pretty.
I don't think it's great though that the Nuggets are just going to have such a coast the first round. You know what I mean? They're not in playoff mode at the moment. I mean, you could say, they might get, they can. If you look at that, go to their bench. I think they may have played the most players out of any team. There's a lot of DMPs in a lot of other games there, but there's not a lot of DMPs in the Nuggets because they could afford to play some, absolute bums off the bench at the sort of like bottom end of the bench where they wouldn't get a game in a close playoff series. So, that can be a good thing and a bad thing. They could reduce the minutes load that are on those bigger guys, but at the same time, they've got a big second round, whoever they're going to come up against here. And they need to really sort of gear up a little bit, but there's not much they can do if their opposition isn't putting up much of a fight.
No, but this was always going to be necessarily the case for it. I mean, they play. Yeah. Are they playing one of the Suns and Clippers? After?
Yeah,
that's their route. And I mean, they're going to have that series is going to go at least 6. I'd say. I think we could probably all agree that. I don't think it's going to go 5. I think it's going 6. Like, if you fancy the Clippers or the Suns that are going to go either way on this now, it should go 6, and they're going to be fiercely competitive games, each and every one of them. Yeah. If the Nuggets have 4 of these and then stroll into a Suns or Clippers team who are roaring for it, it's not going to be necessarily the best sort of build up. You're right.
Yeah.
In terms of going to it, but look, the Nuggets. This is sort of though what I'd have expected. I don't think they're going to get past whoever they place is the issue. Even if it's the Clippers, I think I'd probably bet on the Clippers at the minute. Is the thing for it. If it did happen, I probably would. There is a mental thing with Denver, and I know it's a big disrespect for how good they've been, but it's just what I've got.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say with the Clippers is obviously we've seen them match up in the playoffs before. Bubble, granted, but the Clippers arguably had a better team then. And the Nuggets had a worse team then, and the Nuggets got through. So I do think it's a matchup issue for the Clippers, the Nuggets.
Yeah,
the Suns is an interesting series, and I think I probably would pick. I mean, we did the playoff prediction that I picked the Suns to do it. So
yeah,
either game is tough. Either game is tough. I'll say
it's easy for me to. It's easy for me to say it now, but when I'm looking at it from in my head going into it, if the Clippers come out of a 7-game battle with Phoenix, go through, and you've got Kawhi Leonard playing like vintage Toronto Kawhi here, and then he runs into Nikola Jokic, who's had to deal with like Gobert for 4 games and easily dispatch him sort of with a coffee and a donut in one hand and getting rid of him. I'm picking the chomping at the bit Kawhi Leonard over Nikola Jokic in that regard, but that's here nor there. That's to be decided on another day. But that's all of our rundowns for it. We've obviously got a few games that are going to happen tonight. We've got the second round of these games that are now going to kick through. Unfortunately, none of them are UK-friendly GMT times for us during the week. We'll have to wait for the weekend and the Fridays for it. Do we actually have one? If I look at Friday on the 21st, is there a friendly? Don't know. Midnight. Saturday, have we got one? 6 p.m. Saturday. So yeah, we got Suns Clippers at 8:30 Saturday night. And on Sunday, we've got Kings Warriors. So that's two decent games on a prime time here in the UK on the Sunday side of things. But in any case, that is going to wrap that one up there. Thank you very much for listening. If you are listening to us on an audio platform, or if you're watching us here on YouTube or Twitter, wherever you're watching us live, if you could consider hitting the subscribe button here on YouTube and liking the video, it would mean a lot to us. It would help us out more than you could possibly imagine. If you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, leave us a review. 5 stars would be tremendous, and we would appreciate that and love that from you. Follow us on all of major platforms at Swingman Pod, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you like to get your social jam on. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next podcast that we're going to run through on the playoffs soon. Thank you very much for listening. And I've not got the thing up. Peace.